Greetings to you all. Today is the 11th of November 2021. On this day in 1965, in Southern Rhodesia, as it was called then, now Zimbabwe, Ian Douglas Smith unilaterally declared independence, UDI. What were the circumstances that led Ian Douglas Smith and his right-wing party, the Rhodesian Front, to declare unilateral independence in Southern Rhodesia? You will know that in 1948, just shortly after the Second World War, the National Party in South Africa won elections in 1948. The winning of the elections by the National Party in 1948, a party that was close to the Nazis in Germany, the Hitler Party, sent shockwaves to Britain. So the British could not stomach the victory of the National Party in South Africa. They then sought to create, some call it another South Africa. But in fact, they wanted to establish, which they did, a super colony, which is known as the Federation. The Federation brought together what was then Northern Rhodesia, today Zambia, what was Nyasaland, today Malawi, what was Southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. The expectation was that migrants from Britain, because they were not getting jobs, the less skilled white in Britain. So there was a thinking that they will migrate to this super colony called the Federation. Of course, at some point, a name was being floated around, which would have been the name of the Federation had the Federation remained up to this day. The name Zambia was a name that was floating, which was being proposed to say the Federation was to be called Zambia. This means, assuming that that would have happened, we will not today be having the name Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Malawi. But of course, it did not happen. So the expectation that there was going to be migration of some from Britain to occupy this super colony did not happen as expected. Instead, many white people from South Africa migrated to what was then the Federation. And we know that most of those that migrated had racial problems. They were racist in any case. And they brought along with them the policy of racism. So after the victory of the National Party, a policy was then crafted in 1950, what is called the native policy in Rhodesia. We are looking for this booklet or this document. Is not easy to find, but we are told that one can find it in Bulawayo. So part of the reason of the drafting of the native policy for Rhodesia was that the Commonwealth and Britain, the Commonwealth, by the way, which the president of Zimbabwe or the government of Zimbabwe now wants to rejoin, was of the view, just as it was in the case with the Portuguese colonies, to create a black middle class, which is called asimilado. Assimilado is a Portuguese colony. So this class of blacks assimilado was to be made up of educated blacks who would have studied in missionary schools and so on, would constitute this class. So the idea was to gradually usher in majority rule, but gradually through bringing this assimilado class, which will have rights, same rights as the white settlers. They would participate in the economy of the country, of course, as economic managers. They will not own the decisive means of production. They will have a right to cast their votes. So you will have a limited blacks, the assimilado class that was going to enjoy these rights, the educated blacks. But the rest of blacks will remain on the sidelines, as was the case. So the Commonwealth was also afraid or concerned about the revolutionary literature that was emerging from West Africa. Now, realizing that blacks in Southern Africa will be influenced by revolutionary literature coming from West Africa. So a policy had to be put in place, native policy in Rhodesia, which then later on established the federation. But of course, you will also know that the federation ran into problems. By 1964, Zambia had gained its independence, or there was black majority rule by 1964 in Zambia. Same with Malawi. But in Southern Rhodesia, things were different. Of course, some will argue that because of the racist attitude of the Rhodesian Front, which at some point replaced Gaffey Todd as a prime minister who was a liberal, who was seen to have been weak, was replaced because he was part of those that agreed to introduce this black middle class, which gradually was going to lead to the majority rule. He was replaced. Then came in Edgar Whitehead. And again, others will argue that the racists in the Rhodesian Front thought he was weak. Therefore, he was not a man to be trusted. They to vote him out. Then it came in Winston Field. Winston Field is interesting because he was born in the United Kingdom. He became prime minister. So it was at the point that the federation was basically collapsing, where transition was to happen to black majority rule in Southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. Because Malawi, Zambia had gotten their independence or transited to majority rule. So again, Western Field was seen as weak, and they thought that he would not really confront Britain where he was born. It was then that we saw the emergence of Ian Douglas Smith, who was born in Southern Rhodesia in Shuruku. On this day, 1965, he then unilaterally declared independence. So the UDI, or the declaration of UDI, it was not about the racist attitude of Ian Douglas Smith and his friends. Firstly, Britain had vested economic interests. The reason to create this middle class of black people, as Unilateral, it was to ensure that these were going to be economic managers. Even at some point when there was transition to majority rule, it was going to be what Kwame Nkrumah characterized as neo-colonialism. We've spoken about this in other platforms. Neo-colonialism basically says you can have your flag, you can have your black leaders in parliament, your black prime minister or president, but the economy remains in the hands of the white racist or white colonizers. So the issue was economic. It was not about the racist attitude. Yes, the racist attitude of Ian Smith and others contributed, but it was not the driving factor. But the issue was the control of the economy in Southern Rhodesia. So in 1965, on this day, Ian Douglas Smith declared, unilaterally declared independence. What then does this mean today, the unilateral declaration of independence? It meant that the armed struggle had to intensify after UDI. 15 years of guerrilla warfare as led by Zipra and Zandla and the other revolutionary forces. But had the federation remained and the country was called Zambezia. So there's another school of thought which says, had that remained or that happened, we were going to have, we're not going to have one tribe dominating over other tribes. Economic integration with no tribe dominating over other tribes. There are so many ethnic groups in Zambia today. So imagine if those were integrated into one territory in what is now Zimbabwe, Nyasaland, Malawi, Northern Rhodesia, Zambia. We're not going to have dominance of one tribe. And our politics in Zimbabwe today is basically defined along tribal lines, which the Zimbabwe Communist Party seeks to address. To say the struggle in our country cannot be fought along ethnic lines. It is the struggle against imperialism and the looting class. So, had Ian Douglas Smith not declared UDI, we're not going to have the armed struggle as it happened intensified from 1965 up to 1980. We're not going to have Kukuraundi. We're not going to have Capricorn society that was going to play a key role in the mobilizing of young intellectuals inside the ZAP, which led to a split in 1963. So it is safe to say we're not going to have Kukuraundi had we transited to a majority rule around 1964, 1965. Had Ian Douglas Smith and his Rhodesian counterparts did not declare UDI. But what is significant to note is that under UDI, Rhodesia was isolated, just as the political leadership in Zimbabwe today is isolated. Sanctions were imposed, just as we have sanctions today. The economy of Rhodesia was built along racial lines. We have addressed that previously in the previous video when we spoke about sanctions, you can refer to that video. But what we are saying today as the Zimbabwe Communist Party is that there is need, as we have argued before, to create what we call the reunion agenda. Of course, we understand there are others who are calling for the redrawing of the boundaries between Twagazi, Barroso land, and so forth. We understand those arguments, and with this video, are not addressing that. But what is correct, given also what is happening in Southern Africa, particularly in South Africa today, where the migration question is taking center stage in the political discourse, is that revolutionaries in Southern Africa must not be persuaded or being found now standing in one corner with the right-wingers. As we see the emergence of right-wingers today, the Herman Mashabas of this world, who are calling for migrants to go back to their countries of origin. But revolutionaries should begin to say, wait a minute, we are one people. If you go to Zimbabwe, Zambia, you go to South Africa, Botswana, Swaziland, Mozambique, we have relatives across the borders. While the right-wing formations are calling for the strengthening of the borders to keep migrants away from other countries, revolutionaries must be calling for the dismantling of the very colonial boundaries. Revolutionaries must be calling for the integration of our economies in what we call the reunion agenda. The reunion agenda basically means we must collapse these borders within the SADC region as a first step in building unity in Africa. SADC speaks about free movement of goods, free movement of people within the region. But we are beginning to see a strong right-wing movement emerging around the question of migration. And a true revolutionary will not join the right-wingers, but a true revolutionary will call for the reunion agenda to say we're one people. The British or the Commonwealth, as it called for what it called the native policy in 1950, to build a super colony for economic reasons, to exploit us. Revolutionaries today should be calling for a republic in SADC to integrate our economies, to reunite our people, to reject the imperialists in our region, and transform the economy to advance the interest of the majority. Unite the working class, unite the peasants in our region. Because the right-wingers want to tell us that the enemy is the presence of migrants, which is not correct. The enemy is imperialism. So, as we mark, whether it's an anniversary or as we remember what Ian Douglas Smith did on the 11th of November, 1965, we must ourselves as revolutionaries begin to say, it is time to advance the reunion agenda on the basis that, one, Our economies are linked in the region. The economies of our region must serve all of us. This can only happen if we integrate these economies. And we cannot integrate these economies successfully if we remain divided by these colonial borders. Let us hear your views on this subject. Write your comments. Please like this video, circulate so that we continue to engage and subscribe. I am Ngabuto Nicholas Mabena, General Secretary of the Zimbabwe Communist Party. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.